Boxing, like many other sports around the world, to the viewer can be described as an emotional roller coaster while experiencing moments of surprise, anger, excitement, and even sheer frustration. And for many boxing fans, watching your favourite fighter lose can be tough in itself, whether the opponent was awarded the victory down to unanimous decision, cheating, match fixing, or just simply getting knocked out so hard that the fighter questioned whether or not the punch had decapitated him. And for the majority of watchers, it's nothing more than pay-per-view entertainment. Well, that is assuming you actually pay for it, but that's none of my business anyways. And quite often, great fighters don't consistently live up to the expectations, and some of these fights lead to shocking upsets, ultimately galvanizing the entire boxing world. It's Saturday the 1st of June 2019, where Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz Jr. were scheduled in for the main card event in New York's Madison Square Garden. The British heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua walked in with a pre-fight record of 22 wins, 0 losses and 0 draws, with 21 knockouts sporting a near 100% knockout percentage. Whereas the Mexican heavyweight contender Andy Ruiz Jr. walked in with a record of 32 wins, 1 loss and 0 draws, also with 21 knockouts while sporting a near 70% knockout percentage. And for AJ, the WBA, WBO, IBO and IBF heavyweight titles were on the line, so in other words, there was much at stake for this fight, and without a doubt, Ruiz looked like the underdog for this matchup. The first 2 rounds, both fighters were sizing each other out, looking to see who might take the early lead during the fight. And now into the 3rd round, things begin to liven up. In usual fashion, Joshua sends Ruiz down with a laser left hook combo for the first knockdown of the fight. And during the 10 count, it was now AJ's mission to finally put this fight to bed with another knockdown. But the next tale of events into the 3rd will have you entirely speechless, and this is what went down.
Sort of an impact. Oh, good shot. Ruiz catches Joshua.
Now, not only did Ruiz just turn into SpongeBob SquarePants to absorb that huge hand like it was nothing, but then responded back with a quick heavy punch combo to drop AJ down to the canvas for the 2nd time in his entire career. Now, having the momentum, Andy Ruiz knocked down AJ again down to the canvas at the end of the 3rd, and also in the 7th, and also again within the 7th for a total of 4 knockdowns during the entire fight, which then resulted in the match finally being waved off as a TKO in favour of Andy Ruiz Jr. It's now Wednesday the 30th of October 1974, when Muhammad Ali and George Foreman were set to clash in this fight titled The Rumble in the Jungle in Kinshasa, Congo, with over 60,000 in attendance, and this night being a memorable night in boxing history. That night, Muhammad Ali walked in with a record of 44 wins, 2 losses and 0 draws, with 31 knockouts, achieving a total knockout percentage of 70%, whereas George Foreman that night walked in with a perfect record of 40 wins, 0 losses and 0 draws, with 37 knockouts sporting an impressive knockout percentage of 93%. This fight had nearly over 1 billion watchers across the globe, with 50 million alone by pay-per-view grossing over $60 million at the time, which in today's inflation would be over $300 million. But not only that, Foreman also had the WBA, WBC, the ring and lineal titles alongside his overall legacy to lose that night. And so to say that this fight would be like any other matchup would be a damn huge misunderstanding. To be frankly honest, the first 4 rounds of the fight, to put it simply, were all quite meaty, with not much action really occurring between both fighters. Prior to this fight, Ali had told his trainer at the time, Angelo Dundee, and also boasted to his fans that he had a trick up his sleeve, which he coined the rope-a-dope. And this technique was to simply lean back and forth on the ropes whilst covering up his guard to drain and wear down Foreman's stamina. According to a post-match interview detailing the events of that night, Ali mid-fight began taunting Foreman saying, "What's going on, George? They told me you could punch." To which Foreman then responded to the interviewer saying, "I honestly thought he was just one more knockout victim. And then about the 7th round, I hit him hard to the jaw and he held me and whispered in my ear, 'That all you got, George.' I then realized that this ain't what I thought it was."
Ali, a sneaky right hand. Another sneaky right hand. This time he works over the shoulder of Foreman. This is a combination.
And finally, by the 8th round, the weary young champion that is George Foreman began showing more cracks in his guard and was left exposed by a series of heavy punches which dropped him down to the canvas with a devastating right jab. And that night, Ali walked out with the W, and for the very first time in his entire career, George Foreman walked out with his first loss, ultimately giving up his heavyweight titles. It's Sunday the 11th of February 1990, and in my very own opinion, this fight could perhaps be regarded as the greatest upset in the history of the sport, and was also the main inspiration for this video. The undefeated and also the undisputed heavyweight champion at the time, Mike Tyson, being the current holder of the WBA, WBC, IBF and lineal championship titles, was set to face off against James Buster Douglas in Tokyo, Japan. Tyson's pre-fight professional record that night was 37 wins, 0 losses and 0 draws, with 33 knockouts with a total knockout percentage of 90%, whilst Buster Douglas walked in that night with a record of 29 wins, 4 losses and 1 draw, with 19 knockouts, sporting a total knockout percentage of 66%. With only a few weeks leading up to the fight, the popular opinion of media outlets was that Mike Tyson would unquestionably walk out with a victory. And on live national TV, HBO presenters were convinced that the fight would be a quick 90-second annihilation against Buster Douglas. And I'm not even joking about this, no word of a lie, hear it for yourself.
HBO boxing analyst, the well-versed Larry Merchant. Larry, what are we about to see? Another 90-second annihilation of an ill-prepared opponent?
Well, in the important game of expectations, this fight is over before it begins or soon thereafter. You have to remember that just nobody believes anybody can compete with Mike Tyson. In fact, Ed Schuyler of the Associated Press, when he arrived in Tokyo, was asked by a customs official what he was doing here. He said he was here to cover the Tyson-Douglas fight. How long do you expect to work? The customs official asked. Oh, he said, about 90 seconds. The good news is...
And as much as I want to say that Douglas came into the fight underprepared and that I was being overpowered by Tyson, I'd honestly be lying to myself. My man was getting a serious life-humbling beatdown. Within the first 7 rounds, to put it simply, the fight was very one-sided. And then only by the end of the 8th round, Tyson retaliates and knocks down Douglas to the canvas by giving a statement that he won't go down easy. And then by the 9th round, in swift and humble fashion, Tyson was soon back to getting his beatdown by Buster Douglas and ultimately getting his ass handed over to him. And for the majority of watchers around the world, it was easy to see that the heavyweight contender, Buster Douglas, that night was the better fighter. And then soon enough, at the end of the 10th round, Iron Mike's undefeated win streak would eventually come crashing down, which resulted in James Buster Douglas standing as the new reigning, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, brutally defeating Mike Tyson. Now, the sport of boxing does not always require overwhelming strength, quickness and endurance, but sometimes it only takes a perfectly timed counter or just one single lucky punch to the back of the head to change the entire direction of a fight. And unfortunately, some fighters enter the ring complacent and some simply underprepared by overestimating their individual abilities while severely underestimating the abilities of their opponents. Thank you all for tuning into this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.